Hey, this is Brian Wesley Johnson, and welcome to another Soulivity weekend. Hey, we have such a incredible show for you today. We're talking about autism, and it's a subject that can invoke deep emotion in a lot of different people around the world, in fact. And it's also something that is also widely misunderstood. These misunderstandings and other things can cause people to create and have created a lot of different stereotypes that are painful for autistic people. So, I am talking with my dear friend, Jude Morrow, who's going to be talking about his own experiences as being an autistic warrior and his new book, which is called Loving Your Place on the Spectrum, details some of his own experiences as well as his experiences with other autistics about common issues, common pain points, and other misconceptions around what it's like to live a life of being autistic. So, without further ado, let's just jump in. I hope you enjoy my conversation with autistic warrior Jude Morrow. Jude, my brother, man, it is so good to see you. I missed you, man.
I missed you too. I've been looking forward to this. There's nowhere to lie. I can't turn the camera around, but I have a calendar here, like that's in front of this, and your interview was circled.
Oh man. Um
Oh,
everyone, if you missed our first interview, uh, which was right before COVID started, right? I mean, it was like 2019, some something around there. Jude, what you were the second interview of that new season in 2019, and we had a great conversation about your first book, Why Does Daddy Look So Sad? And that you dedicated to your son Ethan, who is amazing. Hey, Ethan. Always
Ethan's
got
not
to do this.
actually here.
Oh, he's
He's
there.
not
Oh,
here.
man. That's so cool. He is.
I would have brought him in to say hello, but because Ethan's like he's a Hollywood sweetheart. He's better in front of the camera and with the
Right.
radio and on stage than I am. But he didn't make it here. He decided to go for hot chocolate and cinnamon buns with his grandmother, my mother instead.
Wow. Well, we love him here. I love him. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad that we're talking about your new book, Loving Your Place on the Spectrum. Yeah, and that's him right there. That great backside shot of you, Jude. I love it.
Yeah.
Rock star. Um, I'm gonna tell you, you took it up a notch with this book. Um, it's if I thought that Why Does Daddy Look So Sad was at a level where it was very personal, I would say this is even personal in a different way. Um, where it really captured this journey of awareness, or I should say experience to awareness, awareness to awakening, to acceptance, transformation, to empowerment. And
Couldn't myself.
I
That's what it was.
I and I was we were talking offline about this before we started recording that this book and everybody this book is about our autistic brothers and sisters and the things that they embody as people, but it's not just for autistic brothers and sisters. It's for all of us. And we're going to talk more about why I say that and why it means so much. Um but my first question to you is you took a leap of faith last year and we talked about it, where you stepped out. You had been a social worker for many years and you left that behind. You said, listen, I need to go out here and do this work. I know what the work is. Tell us what work you decided.
Well, whenever lockdown came about the first time in 2020, I wanted to go full time with what I'm doing now with my own company, which is Neurodiversity Training International. And what we do is we work with businesses and nonprofits to develop a kinder mindset for autistic people. And the bonuses to those things are higher levels of acceptance, higher levels of impact among autistic people. And then with those two things, that certainly generates more revenue. I've been speaking more, I've been writing more, and just basically kind of ingraining myself into the community because I had done like consultancy work and kind of like side marketing work while I was a social worker for a long time. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to build the team out and I'm going to pursue this and chase it and do it properly because before like NTI became what it is now, it was almost like a group of friends,
Hmm.
like that had a belief, that had a common goal,
Yeah.
and now it's become a real living, breathing entity that has reached every continent, including the South Pole. So
Yeah.
it's been a really, really fun uh, 18 months, nearly 2 years. And what I ultimately want to spread is
Hmm.
that autistic people, no matter what their level of ability, should be celebrated for what they can do instead of what they can't do in comparison with their peers. And we're having an impact. And we love what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the fact that you started this out because that's exactly where I wanted to go, right? Where we're talking about decades and decades and decades and decades and decades of definitions, of diagnoses, of what I would say is hurtfully impactful, non-consciousness kind of relationships to people who are autistic, which in of itself is has been an issue. Like I love that you talk in one of the because everyone as you go through the book, and I love the way you laid this out, Jude, which is you're answering questions that people have asked you about being autistic. And the answer, and even in here, you say the answers that I give aren't monolithic. It's not like everything that I'm answering about my personal experience is everybody's experience. That it's my individual experience, and it's about how do we relate to each other, then to how do I know, oh, you have this disease or whatever, this diagnosis, and what do I need to do to cure you to make me feel okay about being around you, right? Which is what we're talking about, everybody, right? That it's about us, not about our autistic brothers and sisters who need our love and support. Um, One theme that I got from the book, so my second question is, we are all, you put through this thing about we're more than a collection of our outer expression. There's this theme, right? And for autistic people, you're more than a collection of what people have defined as symptoms. Am I right about that?
Well, but what has happened is there's been a collection of stereotypes and stigmas that have been gathered, collated, and kind of crushed together to make what one would call the definition of autism. And the definition as it stands, if you look in the dictionary now, if you're watching this now, right? What I want you to do is I want you to take out your phone and I want you to look up autism definition. And you'll get something like this. It says a neurological disorder of varying severity, which encompasses obsessive and repetitive behaviors whilst having narrow interests.
Right.
Where whenever you really sit back and look at it, there's people out there that say, "Oh, we were striving towards acceptance of people and all of that," but that's what the definition is laid out as. And from the inside out, whenever I saw that definition, whenever I was 17 or 18, whenever I
Hmm.
knew that I was autistic, but rather I hid it out of shame, was because I don't want to be associated with that.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
yeah, like, and that's where we really struggle to accept ourselves. Now that puts the onus, oh, we want autistic people to accept themselves. Most of us do, but the fact of the matter is, other people do not. Where and you quite rightly pointed out that the difference with Why Does Daddy Always Look So Sad and this book is that the first one's about my personal experience, which is fine. And by the way, it's not a spoiler. I don't die at the end. And but the second book, I wanted to kind of capture other people's experiences other than my own. Where I suppose in between the two books, there was a bit more of a story where I found my tribe. I got to speak to more people like me, get to really know the nooks and crannies and the kind of issues and strengths that uh, the autistic community has, and
Hmm.
I wanted to articulate those from the autistic point of view because what you have, Brian, right? And I hope you kind of look into this, and everybody watching this looks into it afterward and has a little bit of a chuckle about it. Is that whenever it comes to autism and autistic people, right? The current state is maybe 40 to 50 years behind most societal groups because what you'll have on the internet and on LinkedIn and everywhere else is you'll have these autism experts or these certified autism professionals.
Right.
Where, yeah, don't get me wrong, I know that there's allies and there's people that are not autistic but support us and, power to them, I say. But often the narrative is driven by non autistic people telling autistic people like me what being autistic is not. Where yes, we have our struggles like every other person. We have our strengths like every other person. But the thing is that the strengths just are not emphasized enough.
Right. Right.
And most of the mainstream narrative has been, I suppose, driven by non-autistic people. Well, and albeit with their hearts in the right place. Now, let me give you an example. Now, in 2021, if there was like a focus group or a committee formed to prevent sexual harassment toward women,
Hmm.
and that group was chaired entirely by men, it would be laughed at, it would be ridiculed, it would be torn down, it would be dismissed. But
Right.
the fact is that that kind of decision making and narrative steering table is mostly filled by people who aren't autistic and who do not have the experience every day. And
Right.
that's something that over time I want to see changed.
Yeah, and that's the part that boggles the mind right now, right? I mean, even if you are a scientist and you're studying autism in people, science would dictate that you would be talking to and relating with the people who are autistic, not just doing a completely observational study and deciding what it is without any type of interaction and that kind of thing, where you're not including, these are people who have feelings, thoughts, hopes, dreams, ambitions, aspirations, right? And why isn't that included? It's included in other like things, studies of things, right? Why not here? And so it really captured for me and honed into me what we talked about even 2 years ago and made it even more real and where I could touch it and really feel it from you, Jude. I mean, this is a book, this is a really, really deep, heartfelt, um, as I would say, a call for freedom. Because in truth, I think that's where you're getting at, right? Where freedom from these stereotypes, these ill-conceived definitions, this whole perspective that autism is something to be treated, and it's not. It's not.
Exactly. Like, even if you look in history, even when being having an alternative sexuality was viewed as needing treatment,
Right.
where
Right.
I'm not naive either. I know that there are autistic people that do need supports, that do need extra levels of care and guidance. I know that, but the thing is that even with people who need more practical assistance from others, they still have talents and wishes and wants and everything you just said.
Right.
Where I'm not an elitist, where I will say, oh, stop offering any assistance to any autistic person. I mean, that's not the path that I want
Right.
to go
Right.
down.
Right.
Because even yes, I can go in front of a camera. Yes, I can stand on stage and talk, and I can do all of these things. But I mean, if you had placed a camera on a wall at JFK Airport last week, whenever I missed my flight, whoa, I didn't cope with that well. I didn't cope with that well. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, JFK were fabulous, but for me, it was just I really couldn't manage it. It was really, really tough, and it was a struggle. It was a nightmare. Now, not that missing flights in airports are a walk in the park and an
Right.
absolute cakewalk for every single person in the world, but I did feel it slightly more acutely than what the average person would. But whoa, it hurt.
Right. And you were saying again, because people who are autistic, you're not a monolith. There's other people who are autistic that could have been in JFK and not had the same experience at all.
And coming up,
When you're on the beach, what do you have to have, Jude?
so stay tuned for more Soulivity Weekend. You can find all the Satonic products at our Go shop on Soulivity at go.soulivity.com now. Shop for beauty products, skincare, hair care, it is all there. At the Go shop, Go Shop Soulivity.
Hi there, Sheila Applegate here with some exciting news. I've joined the incredible Soulivity team as the host of the new Consciously Awesome live show, where I will be sharing insights to help you discover your full brilliance and claim the vibrant life you deserve. So tune in every Wednesday right here on Soulivity TV to to join the fun. And remember to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss a single episode. Have an awesome week, and I will see you on Wednesday.
Soulivity Magazine and Beyond Words Publishing want to remind you about the importance of continuing to follow public health guidelines to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your community. Please continue to wear a mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. Please visit these sites for further information about how to stay safe from COVID-19 into the new year. Remember, love protects us.
And now back to more from Soulivity Weekend.
You talk about you said there's a prime example. Do you remember that prime example of you walking on the beach? When you're on the beach, what do you have to have, Jude? What do you have to be wearing?
Shoes. I need to have shoes on my feet. I need to have shoes. The feeling of sand under people's under feet. It's the most distressing thing to me. It's terrible. Now, but I mean, don't get me wrong. That's a bit of hyperbole. Like social injustice, inequality, discrimination. Like they're way up there. But I mean, sand, bare sand, dry sand touching my feet and going on between my toes is
Like,
definitely in the top 10 for me.
okay,
Bah!
you're like walking on broken glass or walking on sand. I'll take the
Give me the
glass.
glass. Give me the glass.
And you talk about that there are many people who are autistic that have no issue doing that, right? But maybe there
Yep.
might be something else, right? And so we as a community have to start looking at and understanding, going through the same process that you went through, Jude, which is experience this awareness, understanding, awakening, acceptance, transformation, right? We have to go through the same process, but with people who are autistic guiding us along the way, and advocates who have learned, parents who've gone through this process, right? Where we're learning from you instead of the other way around, right? Let's back up a moment, and because there may be some people who haven't read your first book, and I want you guys to go out there and buy both books. You need to do that. Tell me when you realized and accepted. Because there's a realization and then there's the acceptance part, that you yourself were autistic.
Realize the gap between realize and accept was maybe 20 years. So I realized I was maybe 5, where I'd gone to school and I was the only person that had an adult sitting with them all the time. And I always wondered, why am I the only person with an adult sitting with me? And people don't tend to get it. Like, imagine being like the only child in a classroom that has an adult with them pretty much all the time. And I didn't really like to mix. My favorite thing in the whole world was like lining my toy cars up. I even do it on my desk with pens, with pencils, with lots of things. Like, I mean, I don't want to move the camera, but like there's stuff lined up everywhere in here, and it's orderly. And I always knew that I had a very particular way of doing things, and other people adapted kindly to my way of doing things, or tried to make me do it their way.
Okay.
Where, not that it was a selfish thing, it was just how my brain worked, where I needed a different mode of which to see
Right.
in the same way as another person would see, the same way someone would need classes, physically and metaphorically for that matter. But then acceptance came 20 years later, where there was so much stigma, there was so much negativity around the A word that I didn't want to be associated with it. Where
Wow.
I didn't want to be associated with it. I wanted nothing to do with it, and I wanted to beat it or overcome it. And all of these things, I wanted nothing to do with it whatsoever. It only took until my son Ethan was born to kind of
That's right.
realize that I needed to, I suppose, make peace with myself, because whenever you're autistic, something happens and it's called masking. It's like an
Right.
automatic behavioral response where
Okay.
you'll try and mimic or blend in with other people like a chameleon. Where that's what I tried to do, and eventually I got so exhausted after 25 years of doing it that Ethan realized, you know, something's quite off with this guy, and there was. But the being off bit wasn't the fact that I was autistic. It was the fact that I was doing everything to hide my true authentic self. And after years of doing that, it caused extreme fatigue. Like, I mean, sleep for a week fatigue. Like, it was terrible. And then I suppose then I had to go through my own acceptance journey where I needed to see my life differently, where
Mm-hmm.
I had to see my life as one victory after another rather than one obstacle after another, and kind of overcoming those obstacles in style. And that's the kind of mindset I have now going forward, rather than looking back at a life of challenges and overcoming and everything else, where the only thing I needed to overcome was my own self doubt and poor self image. And whenever those things were done, good things happened. Where I get to write about it, I get to talk to Brian, I get to talk to other people, I get to go over the world and stuff. And I mean, it's been great. Where I'd like to be like the poster of, when self acceptance comes around, good things happen, because good things have and will continue to happen since I've got to this kind of new, happier state.
And you did something in, you talk about this in the book as well, where, and this is something, and again, I'm about to tell everybody why you need to read this and take it in as something for yourself as well. You talk about strength-based approach to living your life, right? Where even in the story that you just told, it's why I asked you that question, where you're just you kind of cope, right? You're going through life coping and trying to overcome and mimic and all this other stuff. You're not being. You're not just being who you are. You are a person who has strengths and things that you're not so strong in, right? So why focus more attention on the things that you're not so strong in? Focus more on the stuff that you are strong in and leverage it. And look at you. I'm amazed, man. I'm amazed not at you being an autistic man who has done this. I'm amazed at the man that I see in front of me that took a leap of faith and is now this worldwide advocate and warrior, living your best life. This is your best life. You were
It
on the
is.
road before, but this is your best life now, right?
It is. It absolutely is. And I wouldn't change it for anything. I
Right.
really wouldn't change it for anything. And the thing is, I'm as autistic now as I was when I was born. The fact is that I'm way more confident, happy, and at peace within myself than I was when I was young. And that's all the difference, is that being autistic never ever held me back in anything I ever did. Where that was my perception,
Right.
where it held me,
Right.
where it wasn't being autistic that held me back. It was how other people viewed me as
Right.
one part of it, but probably the larger part was I wasn't at peace with my own identity.
Wow. And it again, and you speak in language that all of us, autistic or not autistic, need to take in, right? These are lessons that all of us need to have and practice and move forward with. That's why it's when I look at what you're talking about, it's how we relate to each other, because there is such greatness in all of our autistic warriors that we can learn and accept in our own lives in the things that we're dealing with, right? And moving and transforming, going through our own personal transformations. And so, I look at, again, as I talked before, we're talking about that this is about creating this emancipation process of moving away from the negativity and the false beliefs that have become the norm in how we relate to each other, and move and create a new normal, which is what you're demonstrating today, right? This is the new, everything still is there, like you just said, everything is there. It's how you're relating to it, and and you're making the choice in terms of what's going to be limiting and what's not going to be limiting for you, right? Um, Tell us some of, I want to dive into, everybody got to get the book now. We're having this conversation. You got to get this book. Or I'm coming after you.
And
Right? Um, do tell us some, let's give people a quick couple of examples of some of these false beliefs that around, autism. Let's give them a little sample of that.
oh, I mean, where do you want me to start? Like, I mean, there's so many. Like, if you want to make this an 8 hour kind of monologue special of the gospel according to Jude Morrow, we can, but I'll try and condense it down into a couple of examples where, first of all, people think that a diagnosis is the keys to the kingdom, where a lot of people think that a diagnosis is the answer to everybody's prayers. And the fact of the matter is
Mm.
that it is not. Where in all my time in the road, and even through COVID on the virtual road, I have never met anyone that has suspected or believed their child or themselves to be autistic and been wrong.
Mm.
Where it's it's true and it's felt from within. It's the same as our kind of solidarity partners in the LGBTQIA plus community. I mean, a diagnosis isn't needed with that community. And although we differ in some ways, that a diagnosis can be the keys to additional supports like housing and welfare and whatever that may be, and that's fine.
Right.
But a lot of people think that a diagnosis is the kind of answer to all prayers, and it isn't. Now, this is what's very interesting is often ask people, where did you learn about autism and autistic people? And these are the answers that I'll get. Okay. Number one is always like advocates, and that would mostly be like parents of autistic children. The second one would be like professionals and stuff like that. And then you'll get a small portion that say autistic people, which is an extra bonus point for that one. But the fact of the matter is this: the narrative about autism and autistic people is not being driven by science. It's not being driven by the medical profession, not a lot of healthcare and therapeutic providers, but actually marketing companies. Because, I mean, you ask yourself out loud, uh, what is the number one emotion that makes people purchase something? And yes, you've got it, it's fear. Fear sells. Fear has always sold. Like,
Wow.
I'm not cool. I'm not in with abbreviations, but I know what FOMO is, fear of
Right.
missing out.
Right.
And the kind of marketing companies, when it came to autism, latched onto this. Where if you don't take our therapy or support program or whatever, then you could potentially be missing out on your child having a normal, in air quotes, development. Where that's what's happened, and that's where the stigma started to grow.
Right.
That's where
Right.
things started to get worse whenever the negativity was pumped out there en masse via the media
Oh
and
yeah.
magazines.
Oh yeah.
That's how it really started to turn. Where you need to think, where did I learn about it? Where some people can't even pinpoint it. Like it's just information I've gathered over the years. And then you're like, but from who? And people can often get stumped at that. Where, I mean, another thing that I want to get down is that we can and do live happy, peaceful, normal lives where we get married, we
Mm-hmm.
have houses,
Yep.
we drive cars, a
Yep.
lot of us, we and enjoy beverages at the weekend. We socialize. We're not stuck indoors by ourselves all the time because we cannot socialize. I mean, it's just not true.
And coming up,
The sad thing is, I mean, autistic people are an oppressed group, and sadly, humanity keeps making the same mistake twice.
so stay tuned for more Soulivity Weekend.
Life is full of moments. And when sickness breaks your momentum, from the 5 a.m. stomach bug, or stress and anxiety at work, don't forget you have Teladoc. Great care options by phone, video, or app. 24/7 access to doctors. And access to therapists 7 days a week. From anywhere you are. Day or night. Whatever it is, we're always ready to help. So you can get back to enjoying life's best moments faster. Life is good. Enjoy it well.
Visit a doctor today without even leaving your home. For as little as $19.95 per month for a family plan, you get access to board-certified physicians as often as you need it. And there's $0 for medical visits anytime, anywhere. Register now by visiting soulivity.com/health perks. That's soulivity.com/health perks.
Are you ready to take that first step towards true, unwavering inner happiness? Are you like thousands of people who have everything they need, not want, but need, and still can't seem to find happiness and fulfillment in their lives? If so, the Steps to Happiness show is for you. On my show, you will learn about the principles and practices that lead to true inner happiness. Because guess what? It isn't found in our external environment, but within ourselves instead. Together with my guests, we will explore the latest physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being practices. And together, we'll advise you on the actionable steps you can take towards a happier, more fulfilled, authentic life. So I invite you to join me each week on Soulivity TV on the Steps to Happiness show with me, Teresa Greco.
And now back to more from Soulivity Weekend.
Why do the stereotypes persist? I mean, is the fear thing, is it money? Is it just do you believe it's a money thing, or why do these persist? Why do these stereotypes persist? Why does this treatment aspect and diagnosis aspect of relating to autistic people, why does it persist so strongly?
Because among us, there's a real problem, and that false evidence does appear real. Where whenever people find out that they're autistic and they go on their favorite internet search engine, no matter what that may be, and they'll find things like autistic people lack social skills, in air quotes. So if if you put two and two together, and don't forget, the young mind is a malleable one,
Okay.
which can be both the best thing in the world or the worst.
Worst thing in the world.
So
Yeah.
let's go to the latter of it being the worst, where people could read that like I did and say, oh, autistic people lack social skills. I'm one of them. Therefore, I mustn't go out and socialize because I'm no good at it, apparently. Where whenever I got a bit more confident, I got a bit better at it. Don't get me wrong. Nobody likes downtime and a bit of gaming more than me, but don't tell anyone. Like that's nobody likes that more than me. Uh, but I believe those things about myself. I believe that the way I communicated was wrong. The way I played as a child was wrong. The way I socialized and mixed in pubs and other non-pubby places was wrong.
Right.
So it deterred me from going to these things. And this isn't a unique experience. for me, that like this is an experience that's shared with so many other people like me, is that false evidence does appear real, and that's sad. Like
Yeah.
it's like ingrained societal exclusion.
I just it's just amazing to me that in this year 2021 going into 2022 that we still have not learned some of these lessons, right? And I get it. The fear thing specifically too. I mean, around that people are, fear, you're a parent, you have an autistic child, you have absolutely you're yourself a babe in the woods. You don't know, you don't have any inkling because parenting in of itself is hard, right? There is no manual that you can buy on parenting. And now you have another layer of building a parenting relationship with your autistic child, which people are already saying you should be afraid of, right? I mean, because that's where that kind of is born from. Oh, if you don't have a child that fits this mold, you should fear it.
Yeah.
You can love your child, but you should be afraid for your child 24/7 and just, oh, well, they'll never be able to do this, that, and da 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 da. And it hurts me to the core. Hurts me to the core.
It's injustice. The sad thing is, I mean, autistic people are an oppressed group, and sadly, humanity keeps making the same mistake twice. And twice, way more than twice, hundreds and hundreds of times that this mistake has been made, that the human race stigmatizes and casts aside those who are not like the majority,
Hmm.
where it's the same sort of symptoms, where let's plug in a completely neutral example. Let's think of the indigenous natives of Nunavut in the Canadian Arctic,
Okay.
okay, where they had their own name, the Inuit, but people of the Western world said, no, we prefer to call them the E word. That's what we prefer to call them. And their way of life, whilst in their view, completely civilized, completely peaceful, spiritual, kindness, community. But down here, they were savages. Where
Right.
that happens. I mean, most of us live this way. This
Hmm.
small section live this way. And I mean, that can be viewed as quite an anecdotal kind of comparison, where you look at autistic people, where what we want to be addressed as and what we want to be called within ourselves. I mean, most autistic people prefer the term "we are autistic," and then you'll have people that aren't autistic and say, "No, with autism is better."
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was fascinating. That even that difference is there, where there's this hold of this former thinking that's been kind of pushed forward forever. I- as a person of color, right? There's the duality of being a person of color, which relates to decades and centuries ago where we were called colored, which is the negative connotation, right? Which
Mhm.
even generations before us, even my grandmother would say, there's some colored folk over there, right? Then we were black. Now we're African American. But now the greater community of black and brown people is people of color, right?
Mhm.
There's this thing that's there. And it's, again, this is part of the struggle, right? This is part of breaking out and breaking free and creating this new normal of how we think and believe and relate to autistic people, right? Really quickly, there was a part in the book that relates to this that really shook me. And that was this little section near the end of the book where you're talking about little unknown truths. Could you share just a couple of those with our folks, our community, because I think some of these things really make it even more real about the work that you're doing today because it relates to people's very lives and and all of that. So tell us a little bit about that section.
Like, there's two sad facts that kind of underpin our whole existence. Now, brace yourselves because this is true. Where the average life expectancy across the world for autistic people is 36 to 54. So I'm 31 now. So it's coming to the stage where people like me die. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Where being autistic, there can be a lot of kind of concurrent things like epilepsy and strokes and stuff like that. But a lot of it is down to poor self-image, which leads to higher levels of anxiety, less sleep,
Right.
uh,
Right.
tendency to fall into addiction and everything else. So that drives it down. So what I'd love to see in my lifetime is that life expectancy increase. And only 16% of autistic people are in full-time paid employment,
Wow.
where only 16%, that's all. And these facts aren't really publicized. Do you know why, Brian? The reason why is that all of the marketing companies who are promoting their cures and therapies, I mean, if those stats were publicized much more widely, then people would say,
Wait a
well, I
minute.
mean, surely what you're offering doesn't work if these stats are still the same as of
Yeah.
2021.
Right. Right. And then you went into the other one of the other sad truths about parental relationships that end up in physical abuse and even death. That
Mhm.
I was like, there's that levels of so much anxiety and in the relationship that it manifests itself in that. And I was like,
Yeah,
wow.
it's crazy where there have been cases where an autistic child has had their life taken by their parent or caregiver. And the defense of the 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 murderer
Hmm.
has always been, well, the child had very challenging behavior, almost as if being autistic is or having an autistic child is almost a license in court, in a court of law, to justifiably take their lives if they're too much trouble and you don't
Wow.
want to learn, accept, and hear that point of view.
Wow.
Where what we need is a word. And you know what? If you look at all of these symptoms, right? You
Hmm.
look at all of these. I don't normally like using the word symptoms, but there is a disease there, and that is societal prejudice.
Right.
Where you think about it,
Bravo.
where there's a lot of things, every single oppressed group where they're not allowed to name themselves what they prefer to be named, segregation, and unjustified killings,
Yeah.
where those symptoms have existed for centuries against women, the Salem witch trials, people of color,
Slavery.
and whilst maybe not on the same severity, the autistic people are experiencing the same thing
Right. That we
in
know
a
of.
lot
That we know of. Right.
that we know.
It could have been, um, I'm going to plug this movie that I just saw recently called News of the World. And it stars Tom Hanks and there's this little girl who's in there. They never talk about whether or not she's autistic or not. They never talk about, all they talked about was that as a young girl, she got rescued by indigenous people, indigenous American here. And then during the Indian War, she got ripped away. And that caused her not to speak and not to relate to people in a normal way. Go see the movie for the ending because you're going to need tissues because it was
Kind of a lot of
beautiful. It was just a
as a-
beautiful ending. But it brings forth what you're talking about, right? That because people don't act a certain way, and this was in this was taken in the old West, which I'm sure happened. I'm sure there were other
yeah.
children like her in this movie that went through this. So we don't know how long this has been going on, but it had to have started long ago for it to continue today, where the
Oh yeah,
mindset
like
is
I
the
mean,
same.
like even going way back, like you have famous people in history that almost certainly were autistic. But the interesting thing is when you look at Native American culture, you know, Native Arctic culture, and Native Australian culture, the the children who were different, who were in their own time and space, who did things their way and were able to display different gifts, were celebrated by their tribes and communities. And it was only whenever and whenever I say we horrible white Westerners started to populate these places, that their kind, wonderful, gentle, accepting way was viewed as savagery. Where it's sad though that the savagery still does continue.
Right. Right. I so I wanted to end, it's always our interviews are always too short, dude, you know.
Yeah, this could have been 8 hours,
I
easy.
know. We need to do that, The 8 hour
We will.
special, Brian and Jude, or Jude and
The
Brian,
Liberty
however you
Mark.
want to do it. Um,
That's fine.
I want to end our chat with some positivity because there is positivity here. There is this growing transformational movement that's happening in our world. You're part of it. Some other people are part of it, where we're talking about neurodiversity. We're saying, hey, this is this is the future, how we relate to our other brothers and sisters around the world. And at the end of the book, there's this beautiful phrase where you talk about no matter how inclusive or understanding people may think they are, there remain accepted descriptions of us, autistic people, that portray a disenfranchised, unfeeling, non emotional, uncommunicative group of individuals who don't fit into society. Tell us one or two ways that are happening right now that can take us from where we are in that definition and that experience to a new experience of
Well, the first thing
acceptance
that I would,
and
yeah,
everything
like
else.
the first thing that I would say would be always look for the good. There is good in everybody. There's nobody in this world that has no talent. There's nobody in this world that doesn't feel anything. Where with us, we do feel, we do love, we are kind, and we just want to be accepted for who we are. And the way you can do that is by always emphasizing what people are good at rather than what they're perhaps not as good at, in your opinion. Where that would be the first thing. Always have that strengths based approach. And the second thing would be is listen to autistic people, listen to autistic voices, like listen to our experience of things. Where, the like every other kind of person in the world, um, there are kind, understanding autistic people. Like my social media inboxes and even website contact forms are awash with questions every single day, and I make a point of answering them because I like to give the autistic point of view, and there's plenty of people out there that are giving their point of view. So listen to it. Now, I'm not saying that allies don't provide good information. Of course they do. Every single social justice movement in the world needs allies, including neurodiversity. But what I would say is that take your main influence from autistic voices, and whilst taking the main influence from those autistic voices, always keep close to your heart what they're good at.
Wow. Jude, man, thank you, brother. Yeah, yeah, I mean, mic drop, like done, you know, everyone, the book is Loving Your Place on the Spectrum by Jude Morrow. Please, it's available at everywhere books are sold right now. You can buy it on beyondword.com. Jude, you're my brother from a different mother. When we talk, you always open my heart up, even more than what it is, because there's a whole world of people out here that we can bring in to more of our collective and increase the amount of love and support and happiness and joy that all of us experience, because that's what we're really talking about. I mean, there is beauty and enlightenment and empowerment that comes from what you're doing, and all of us get to benefit from it. And so I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your light. Thank you for being the man that you are today, and to continuing to do this work and to walk your truth. So you're standing in your truth, and I feel the power. I really, really do. I really do.
And thank you too. Thank you. It's been really, the pleasure has literally been mine.
Oh man. So everyone, we'll be back with more Soulivity Weekend in a minute.
You can find all the Satonic products at our Go shop on Soulivity at go.soulivity.com now. Shop for beauty products, skincare, hair care. It is all there at the Go shop. Go shop Soulivity. And now back to more from Soulivity Weekend.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my chat with author Jude Morrow. Remember, his book, Loving Your Place on the Spectrum, is available wherever books are sold, including Beyond Words site's publishing site, where you can buy his book directly from them. So until next time, this is Brian Wesley Johnson on behalf of all of us here at Soulivity and Beyond Words. Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next time, where we'll have even more great inspiration for your mind, body, spirit, and soul. See you next time. Bye.
Follow us on social media for giveaways, events, and a whole lot more.